From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Kristen Amiot. It's Friday, October 10, 2025. The Victorian Director of Public Prosecutions says Justice Christopher Beale got it wrong when he found mushroom killer Erin Patterson would spend most of her life sentence in solitary confinement. The DPP is appealing the sentence, which they say is manifestly inadequate and should be revised. Patterson was convicted in July of killing 3 elderly relatives and attempting to murder another at a family lunch in 2023. She's confirmed she'll lodge an appeal against the convictions. The Prime Minister's office went around Jim Chalmers for advice on backlash to the government's plan to tax superannuation. They wanted to know if a petition with 20,000 signatures would affect the policy. Those stories are live right now at theaustralian.com.au. Peace in the Middle East hinges on one thing: Hamas disarming. There was jubilation across Israel and Gaza on Thursday as Donald Trump announced the militant group had agreed to the first phase of a historic peace plan. Now they have to follow through, releasing the Israeli hostages and laying down their weapons for good. Today, our correspondents join me amid the celebration and caution. For 2 years, the skies over the Mediterranean coast in the Middle East have been pierced by missiles and air sirens. But as the sun rose on Thursday, October 9, the sounds of war gave way to joy. In Israel, and in Gaza. The reason? The promise of peace at last.
President Trump has announced Israel and Hamas have signed off on what he is calling the first phase of his peace plan. Trump making the announcement on his own.
Yoni Bashan and Liam Mendes are in Israel for The Australian. Liam, listeners to The Front heard a few days ago about Hostages Square in Tel Aviv and the quite solemn atmosphere there as the second anniversary of the October 7 attacks approached. What's it like there now?
Well, it's an incredibly different scene right now, Chrissy. Singing, dancing, a huge amount of emotion and excitement. There was a lot of praise to US President Donald Trump, people wearing MAGA hats. There was even one woman wearing a Trump papier-mâché mask. But just after we arrived at around 6 a.m., there was one elderly man who was essentially marched out by police. He was holding a sign with a bunch of faces. One of them was Benjamin Netanyahu on there, but there was a bit of a scuffle between him and police as he was taken away. But apart from that, it was just a lot of emotion and a lot of excitement.
The agreement reached on Thursday is being called Phase 1 of Donald Trump's 20-point peace plan. That means on Sunday, Hamas will release 48 hostages who've been held in Gaza since they were taken captive on October 7, 2023. But not all of the hostages survived their ordeal. Their bodies are expected to be returned to Israel on Monday. In return, Israel will maintain a presence in about half of the Gaza Strip until the hostages are safely home, and release terror-linked prisoners currently held in Israeli prisons. 600 trucks carrying aid supplies will also be allowed into Gaza every day. Donald Trump praised negotiators from Qatar and Egypt in an interview with Fox News for their help in sealing the deal.
The whole world came together, to be honest. So many countries that you wouldn't have even thought of it. The world has come together around this deal. And it's been really an amazing period of time. And so great for Israel, so great for Muslims, for the Arab countries. This is more than Gaza. This is peace in the Middle East, an incredible thing.
What's the significance of this Phase 1 agreement to the Israeli people, Yoni?
Well, I think critical to the Phase 1 deal is the release of all the hostages, which is what the Israeli people have been calling for since the start of this war on October 7. I mean, really, that was the essence of what all the fighting was about. It was that Hamas had conducted an invasion upon Israel slaughtered a very large number of people and then taken 251 people captive to Gaza. And all of the efforts with regard to this war have been really twofold. One has been to eradicate Hamas, but first and foremost, it's been to bring home the hostages. So the significance of this deal just cannot be overstated to the Israeli people. The people I've spoken to today have said that this was a day that was always going to come, although they feel that it's one that could have come a lot sooner had the politics and the diplomacy been aligned at certain points along the way.
Liam, you've spent time with the hostages' families on your various trips to the Middle East over the last 2 years. How do you think they're feeling right now?
There's a real mixed bag of emotions here. On the positive side, people are coming home, but some of those people are tragically deceased. Families are finally going to get the bodies of their loved ones. And then there's other families that are going to have their relatives come back, but they're going to be psychologically damaged, Over 700 days in horrendous conditions inside tunnels, it's going to have an enormous toll on the psychological welfare of these hostages. This isn't the end of the road at all. There's still years and years of recovery ahead.
Donald Trump said on Thursday his confident subsequent phases of the peace plan will come to fruition.
I think you're going to see people getting along, and you'll see Gaza being rebuilt. We're forming a council, the Council of Peace. People are going to be taken care of. It's going to be a different world. I think really the Middle East came together. Amazingly, they came together. They have.
But statements made by Egyptian officials hinted that some of the details were yet to be hashed out. That includes how Hamas will disarm and how Gaza will be governed following the withdrawal of Israeli forces and Hamas militants, who've been promised amnesty if they choose to leave. Yoni, the agreement reached on Thursday only represents a fraction of the 20-point plan presented by Donald Trump. How confident are you the remaining parts of that plan will come to fruition?
Well, I think it's certainly everyone's hope on the ground here. I mean, the point of greatest contention is going to be, will Hamas willingly disarm? It's all well and good for an agreement to come about for the return of the hostages, and certainly that is what's going to make the Israeli public happy. It's going to result in the Israel Defense Forces pulling back their troops, their artillery, the drones, and the border crossing at Rafah is going to be reopened to allow the entry and exit of Palestinians and of aid. And there will be an enormous surge in aid going into the territory. So all of those things are wonderful for the first phase. But in terms of a broader outlook for the future of the Middle East, it's really going to hinge on whether Hamas plays any role in that territory, and the conditions that have been placed on this ceasefire or on any ceasefire throughout the 2 years of war in Gaza, at least from the Israeli side, is that Hamas needs to put down its arms. And the announcement that was received overnight, while being celebrated widely across Israel and certainly in other parts of the world, it doesn't address that question. So that's something that still needs to be sorted out, and we expect to hear more on that in the coming days.
Coming up, why the work at home is only half done. Back home in Australia, Jewish leaders have warned optimism over the Middle East peace deal isn't a proxy for action against rising anti-Semitism. Liberal Minister Julian Leeser and Labor MP Josh Burns have been named as winners of this year's McKinnon Prize for Political Leadership for their roles in fighting anti-Semitism over the past 2 years. Leeser told The Australian anti-Semitism in Australia is at crisis levels.
But there's a very deep support for Israel and a very deep recognition of the need to act strongly and swiftly to deal with the anti-Semitism crisis we face in Australia, a crisis that I sadly don't think will abate even if there is a peace deal undertaken.
You can see the full interview with Julian Leeser and Josh Burns at theaustralian.com.au. Just lastly, Yoni, on Thursday in Sydney we saw that a pro-Palestine march will go ahead in some capacity on Sunday despite the court's rejection of the Palestine Action Group's argument that Israel has committed a genocide in Gaza. What does this mean for social cohesion in Australia and around the globe, do you think?
Well, it certainly doesn't help social cohesion in Australia with regards to what has been a surging issue of anti-Semitism over the past 2 years. But what's always remained very confusing, at least for me, with regard to this protest, is why they haven't been out in force calling for Hamas to accept this deal. And this deal to release the hostages and to end the war has been on the table for a long enough period of time. And instead, we've had people rallying for protest with regard to a so-called genocide occurring at the hands of Israel. Really, what these protesters should have been doing is hitting the streets and calling for an end to the war and calling for Hamas to sign the deal, but they haven't done that. So I think that exposes their true intentions, and I think no one would be fooled into thinking the work on anti-Semitism in Australia is done. In Israel, Liam and I have been walking around speaking to people about the issues that are going on here, and the first thing they say when we tell them we're from Australia is, "What the hell is going on in your country?" And they've expressed genuine disappointment and regret at what is happening in Australia with regard to anti-Semitism. They regard Australia as an unsafe environment for them as Israelis and more broadly for Jews in general. And that is in large part a criticism of a government that hasn't been able to rein in this issue adequately.
What Yoni's describing isn't an isolated incident, and I feel like it's happened a lot more this trip compared to some of our previous trips. So it's certainly not an isolated incident. For example, I was at Disarming Fountain on Wednesday, and this woman, she was 75 years old, she comes up to me and asks, where are you from? I was taking some photos and chatting to people, and I say, I'm from Australia, and she physically scoffed at that. So that's the reaction that a lot of people have had when we've told them where we're from.
Yoni Bashan and Liam Mendes are in Israel for The Australian. You can read the latest on the Middle East peace deal right now at theaustralian.com.au.